Hey guys, welcome to the beginning of a new series 3D design and animation tutorials made easy for kids. By the end of this series, you'll be able to make things such as abstract designs, 3D modeling a car from scratch, phone wallpapers, and some cool animations like this. Okay, so now we're going to be looking at the software itself, known as Blender. And before installing it, you need to keep a few things in mind. You need to have a laptop or a computer because you can't install it on Chromebooks, and a Windows operating system would be preferred over Mac, but it can still work on Mac. And these are the other steps you need to keep in mind as well. And also, once you have Blender installed, when you are working in Blender, make sure it's the only application that you have open because it does take quite a toll on your computer. So you don't want to hurt your computer too much by having other apps in the background. And to download it, just visit the link you see here and then download the latest version and then open the installer and then you can follow the instructions from there. And as of right now, the latest version isn't the one you see on the picture anymore. It's this one. So it's 3.2. And once you download that, you can go ahead and open Blender. And once you do, you'll see this setup screen. And you'll see this only the first time you open Blender. And you can just leave everything on default and just say next. And now we're going to be taking a look at the UI and the basic controls of how to use Blender. So once you've finished setting up the Blender application, every time you open Blender, you'll see the starting screen. And in here, whenever you want to make a new file, you can click on General under New File. Or if you want to open a recent file, they'll be available here. And if it's not from here, you can just click on this open button and navigate to where your actual file is. But if this is your first time, then you won't see any of the recent files because you don't have any. And once we click on General and make a new file, you'll see a big confusing screen here. But it can be divided into three different parts. So firstly, this is the main part. It's called a 3D viewport. And this is where all your objects will be and you can see them, edit them, and play around with them. And this is called your object list of objects. So this is where all your objects will be shown in a list and you can see which ones are there and you can see all their properties under here as well. And this one is called the object properties menu. And this is where you can edit all sorts of different properties for your selected object. And now we're going to be looking at how to move around the 3D viewport. So firstly, if you have a mouse, you can scroll your wheel up and down to zoom in and out of your scene. And if you don't have a mouse, you can always go here, the magnifying glass icon, and then you can just click and drag it up and down to zoom in and down. So I'm going to zoom back in. And the next thing is to pan around and to see different angles of your scene. To do this, you're going to want to press down your middle mouse button. And then if you move your mouse with the middle mouse button still pressed, you're going to move around like this. And alternatively, you can also just select this circle here, and with with your left click still pressed, you can just move around and then you'll do the same thing. And the last option, if you hold shift key on your keyboard and then also your middle mouse button, and then if you move your mouse around, you can pan around like this. And this way, if you have a large scene, you can move around without having to change angles unnecessarily. And this hand icon here does the same thing. You can left click it and then you can move your mouse around while the left click still pressed, and then you'll be able to move. And now we're going to learn about the different axes for navigation. So as you can see here, if you've noticed before, you'll see that there are three different colors, each of them being labeled X, Y, and Z. So the red one is X and the green one is Y, but the Z axis is usually not visible and it's hidden. So these are just used to show like the different axes to navigate around the 3D viewport. We'll get more into this later. And when you have an object selected here, for example, and also make sure it's selected and by the color of its highlight. And since it's orange, I know this cube is selected now. And now I can do three different things with this object. I can move it, I can rotate it, or I can scale it. To move, what I'd be doing is I can either press G on my keyboard, like this, or after selecting it, I can go here, and then you'll see these three arrows, and then you can just select them and drag the cube across. And the next option is to rotate it. If you press R on your keyboard, you can rotate it like this, or you can just go here, and now you can drag these three different axes, and then you can rotate the cube across like this. And the last option is to scale it. So if you press S on your keyboard, you can scale it bigger or smaller than its actual size. And as usual, you have a tool here. And using this tool, you can scale it on a specific axis. So you don't have to scale it all at once. And you can scale it just on like the Z axis if I want to make it taller. Or I can make it a bit more flatter by scaling it on the Y axis like this. And if you don't want to use these tools, you can always just use keyboard shortcuts. So if I want to rotate it, but only over the X axis, I can just press R and then I can press X. And this way, I can rotate it only on the X axis without having to go here. And the same thing applies for moving it or scaling it. So I can press S and then Y, and now I'm scaling it only on the Y axis. And the last thing we're going to be looking at before we finish off with this video is how to delete or add objects. Deleting is pretty simple. You can just select the object that you want to delete, and then you can press X to delete, and then select this. Or I can Control Z to bring the cube back. I can just select the cube, and I can press the delete key on my keyboard, and it'll just go away. And now if I want to add different objects, I can press Shift A, and this will bring up the add menu. And under mesh, you'll see there are different objects that I can add, and they're not just cubes. So let's say I want to add a cylinder. I can do that. And now since I brought the cylinder here, I can do the same things to the cylinder that I did with the cube. So I can scale, rotate, or move it around. So you can play around with these settings and get comfortable with it. And we'll see you in the next video where we're going to be talking about the first project you're going to be making. And we'll also learn about lighting and camera position and what those are. And after that, we're even going to learn how to add colors to these different objects that you add.